or a school event, maybe at church, trying to get something really worthwhile together, maybe a mission trip. And everybody's working together. Everybody's using their gifts. Everybody is doing their specific thing, and then people start getting confused and rumors start spreading. And what started as this wonderful adventure in fun or service or whatever, it all becomes a confused mess. Has anybody ever experienced that? You know, often it's because of a rumor. And often it's because of somebody who's just having a bad day, who starts being, grouchy with other people. You never know quite why it happens, but we know, and we've all experienced, that it ruins the mission at hand. Whether the mission's a wedding or a graduation or something really serious like a food pantry, that rumor weed can get in, whatever it is, and it can start destroying what was so good before things started going awry. Well, I think that's a lot like autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is one of the most devious disorders. The more I studied for this, the more I told Mike, this needs to be a week-long summit, because there are so many different facets. Come on in. And it's very hard to diagnose. If any of you all are suffering from autoimmunity, you often get dismissed as a hypochondriac. You often get prescribed antidepressants. The symptoms are so varying, and it attacks different parts of the body. It's really the only disease that we separate into categories. Like if it's your skin, it's psoriasis. If it's your joints, it's rheumatoid arthritis. If it's how you're walking and your muscular control, it might be multiple sclerosis. We have all these different. In fact, we have over 80 autoimmune diseases, but not one single test for those autoimmune diseases. They're diagnosed based on symptoms. They're diagnosed based on reaction to medications. They're diagnosed, in some cases, on a blood test, but there's not any single thing that even diagnoses all of those things. So it's a heavy burden, and it's a spectrum of diseases that are totally wrought with fear, because these are chronic diseases. These are not something that you can take some medicine and get over. These autoimmune diseases are a huge, heavy burden. Not only for your family and for your future, but also economically. It's estimated that the cost burden of autoimmunity is over $100 billion a year in the United States. Now that is more than cancer. And by some estimates, it's about 30% more than cancer. Now, you all know, if you've been here before, that I got part of my training at Mayo Clinic, and the doctor who started, Dr. Mayo, the original Dr. Mayo, said, a man is not a wagon to be taken apart in pieces, but to be viewed as a whole. And I think the whole autoimmunity spectrum is one of those areas that we absolutely take people apart and try to make them all separate. So it's a spectrum. It's not just, one thing. But all of these different 80 diseases, and some people even estimate that it's maybe 120 when you take all of the immune diseases that fall in the same category, they have a lot in common. So what I'm going to do tonight is try to give you tools and teach you what they have in common. So as you know, with your health, you have to sort of be your own best doctor. I mean, we have excellent doctors. And people will say to me, Debbie, you're holistic. And I say, no, I'm not holistic. I'm not holistic. I'm integrative. I absolutely believe in taking the best we can from every area of medicine and integrating that for the best outcome. I think God has been so gracious in this time to give us so many good medicines, so many good cures, and we want to harness those. We want to harness those with the brain He gave us. He's given us opportunities to learn a lot, and everything doesn't work for everybody with autoimmunity. You sort of have to evaluate your own symptoms, and with autoimmunity, you have to try things. You have to see what works for you. So my mission tonight is to help you have some good tools to start somewhere, to educate yourself, and to start creating your own environment that helps decrease your autoimmune symptoms. I hope that I can decrease some of your fear. That's what I've seen among my coaching clients, is just the fear that goes with autoimmune diseases, because they can just all be so crippling. In fact, I saw a startling statistic that when you're diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, that you have a 50% chance of being unable to work within 10 years. Now, that is a disease that's absolutely on the rise. That's a scary thing. So who's at risk? Everybody's at risk. But it's mostly women. At this point, it's 75% women. Now, that number is decreasing. There's beginning to be more and more men. When I was in dental school, we thought that lupus was only a disease of middle-aged black women. And at the time, I'd worked before at an all-black school, and I knew one person there who had lupus. And it was just a rare thing. But things have rapidly changed since about 1990. And in some cases it might be that we're diagnosing better, but that's not all of it. That's not a bit all of it. So when you're dealing with autoimmunity, there's a whole spectrum. You may know people that are doing lots and lots of different things. So there's diets. There's the FODMAP diet if you're dealing with autoimmunity, where you really limit a lot of foods you eat. Then you go down the scale, and you might get to somebody who wants to eat everything they darn well please, but wants to take medicine. That whole spectrum works. You have to be your own best doctor. You have to decide what works in your life. You have to decide what kind of environment you want to create. And then, as you meet people who are dealing with these challenges, you have to what? Put on lip balm. You have to mind your own business, because everybody has to discover what they want to do for themselves. It's creating your environment is absolutely a mindset, and you'll find out, and I found out, especially with autoimmunity, because it's so difficult to diagnose, because people get labeled with all these different things, that it's hard to develop that mindset that indeed there are things I can do for myself to change my health trajectory. So tonight, I'm going to give you strategies that you can start tomorrow to hopefully change your health trajectory. Now, interesting, there are about 50 million people, 50 million Americans who are somewhere on that autoimmune spectrum. Autoimmunity is the #1 health topic requested by callers to the National Women's Health Information Center. Now, if I had to guess this before I prepared for tonight, I never would have guessed that. I would have guessed, cancer or, something else. It would not have been autoimmunity. So things have changed so rapidly in the last 30 or 40 years. And I was taught in college and dental school that it was a genetic problem. Well, our genes haven't changed in 30 or 40 years. Our genes are the same. So we know we have to look at what has changed. And what has changed is our environment. And our environment has changed significantly. So God designed these bodies equipped with this incredible immune system. And this immune system gets rid of toxins, bacteria, viruses, parasites. I mean, all these things in our environment we're well equipped to deal with. But for some reason, this immune response gets misdirected. It gets confused. Just like the party where something goes awry, there's confusion. And the immune cells, instead of attacking the invader, they start attacking your own body. And this misdirection is like a domino effect. When you get one autoimmune disease, you're much more at risk for getting another one. For example, if you have psoriasis, you're much more likely to get rheumatoid arthritis, and it might be some form of what they call psoriatic arthritis. I mean, it's just a very, very much of a snowball. But they're named, as I said, they're kind of named according to the organ they affect, and every organ has its own physician, right? So like for the blood, you go, if you have any kind of blood autoimmunity, you go to a hematologist. You have a MS, a nervous system kind of autoimmunity, you go to, or migraine headaches, you go to a neurologist. I thought it was interesting that migraine headaches are now classified as autoimmune diseases. The endocrine system with type 1 diabetes, which you go to an endocrinologist. Interestingly, type 1 diabetes has increased by 23% between the years of 2001 and 2009. Type 1 diabetes, I was taught it was all genetic. Our genes haven't changed in the last 30 or 40 years. And they certainly didn't change between 2001 and 2009. So we try to, the digestive system gastroenterologist, that's celiac disease, that's scleroderma's dermatologist. You can just see how this is a problem because we have so much trouble communicating between all these doctors. So this compartmentalization has really hampered diagnosis, and it's hampered care for a lot of people because this doctor might say, oh, this person's just a hypochondriac, they just need antidepressants, and somebody else might say, oh, they just need steroids, and somebody else, you can just see how it all snowballs. And of course, as you know, if you've been at Nourish Life, all those medications, while they work well and while they have excellent purposes, they all have side effects. They all have nutrient depletions. So all of those things we have to address. There are common threads among these disorders, and genetics is certainly one of them. The other two things that are common are among every single one of the autoimmune diseases are environmental factors and gut dysbiosis. Now, gut dysbiosis just means things out of whack. And, that might be, you also call leaky gut or permeable bowel. But in every autoimmune disease, every person I've ever learned about in school, everybody I've ever coached, every single person has some form of problems with their gut. And that might be diarrhea or constipation or, bloating or gas or, just all those intestinal disorders that that so many people suffer from. Now, these diseases share a lot of similar symptoms. And one is fatigue. Another one is like muscle aches and pains, and low energy, low-grade fever is a commonality, skin problems, swollen glands. I mean, you can see how a lot of these things are so vague that you go to the doctor and you just get, you've got a virus. Oh, you caught that virus again. I mean, you can just see how diagnosis can take years to define. But we know now that these are diseases of modern civilization. We know now, because we can know what's happening in these little villages in Africa, they don't have autoimmunity. They don't have toilets either. They don't wash their hands. I mean, they're They're not as clean as we are, but they don't have autoimmunity. So you have to look at that and go, okay, what's different there? They also don't have processed foods. They also don't have these industrial chemicals that are so prevalent in our society. So we have over 80,000 chemicals used in our world here in the United States. Very few have been tested. I mean, they have a lot of good uses, but when they were designed, maybe they're solvents, maybe they're pesticides, they were designed without any regard to what they would do to people. And those are not studies. Those are, if you've been here before, you know I believe in human clinical trials. We might look at rat studies, we might look at monkey studies, but we believe in human clinical trials. But there's not ever going to be any human clinical trials on so many of the factors of autoimmunity. They're too varied. But we know that our environmental toxins are a big piece. The other big piece is gut dysbiosis that I talked about, leaky gut, permeable bowel. Scientists have proven pretty clearly, now that we can map the human genome, we know that genetics is probably only about 30% of all autoimmunity. So that's much, much less than we ever thought. As countries get more toilets, as countries get more cars, as countries get more electricity, more modernization, they get more autoimmunity. So we know that it has a lot to do with our environment. MD Magazine, that's where is a magazine for physicians, and that's where I got my information that it was $100 billion annually for autoimmunity and rising. So we must change our environment, or our environment's going to change us. And as Nourish Life, the health Bible study has progressed. I think that's what I'm getting to, is that it's all about changing our environment. And everybody kind of has to change their own environment based on their own comfort level, their own place in life. It's all different. Everybody's got to figure that out. So we're going to look at tonight from a functional medicine standpoint. When you hear functional medicine, just think that means finding the cause. Functional medicine is, okay, we're not going to just treat the symptoms, we're going to try to figure out the cause. And then we're going to deal with it from an integrative standpoint. An integrative medicine takes functional medicine into account and also takes, modern medicine or pharmaceutical medicine into account. So autoimmunity is a runaway immune response. It's the immune system out of control. And it's always related to chronic inflammation. So how many times have you heard that lately when it comes to health talks? It's always back to chronic inflammation. So we know we can't change genetics. I think I'm all tangled up in this. I'll probably fall down and break some teeth out. But we know we can't change genetics. We know genetics is 30%. And who knows what genetics they have? I mean, at this point, we can map the human genome, but we can't map our own. We can't always go and know specifically if we're, predisposed to whatever. So we can't change genetics, so we can't worry about what we can't change. But then we have the area of environmental toxins. So what in the heck are environmental toxins? Probably just about anything that smells good that comes out of a squirt bottle is an environmental toxin. So that would include like air fresheners, perfumes, any cleaning agents. Those are all things that cause hormonal disruption in our bodies. We know they cause hormonal disruption. We know they cause people to gain weight. We know they change body shapes. I mean, they really do. They cause people to gain weight around the middle, which is the most dangerous area. So common toxins include mold. Mold is something that's very insidious, very hard to find, but it's almost like if you look for it, you're probably going to find a source for mold. I have a person I've coached who, while in college, lived in a moldy underground house. and at a young age developed MS. And you don't know why, you don't know, you can't say it caused it, but you have to pretty much know it's a trigger, and it can't be good. Mold is very, very important when it comes to autoimmune disease. Pesticides, herbicides, mercury, heavy metals. The biggest source of mercury, you always think a dentist is going to tell you teeth, but it's not. It's actually fish. And when you eat fish, if you eat big fish, you're exposed probably to a lot of mercury. So what you want to do is you want to eat fish low on the food chain. Come on in. And of course, if you were at the addictive food lecture, that's just so interesting because these are engineered foods. These are foods that scientists and companies have spent millions and millions of dollars making addictive. So we know that that's one thing that's changed. Of course, cigarette smoke and plastics, and another big source is our synthetic vitamins. A lot of vitamins have formaldehyde in them. So there's just a lot of vitamins that have a lot of toxins. So I'm not like, I think I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm not really big on taking a whole lot of vitamins. One area that really surprised me, that's an area of a potential toxin involved in autoimmunity, are dyes and inks. And a big thing that's being investigated are tattoos. So, it doesn't shock us, but there's a lot of great research going on in Europe. Excuse me. And as recently, the report I read as recently as 2016, there are between the ages of 18 and 35, 50% have tattoos. And a lot of people in our age group do. I'm really thankful that, I read this before I got one, because, it's like, a lot of my friends are getting family tattoos. Hey, Raj, let's go get a tattoo, so you can just do things and not know. You can just get swept up in it and not know. But it's really starting to be checked out. There was a Danish study in 2012 that found, a really good study, that found that 1 in 5 tattoos contain cancer-causing agents, and that 80%, make sure I'm telling you right, 80% of the black ink used in tattoos is carcinogenic. 80%. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is aware of the problem and said many pigments used in tattoo inks are actually industrial grade colors suitable for printer inks or automobile paint. So it's something to be aware of, and there's a lot of people that are starting to have them removed for a lot of reasons. But when you know that, it's pretty important. So we have genetics, which we can do nothing about. We have environmental toxins, and then we have gut dysbiosis. So gut dysbiosis is just a messed up digestive system. Now, God designed our digestive system as this protective barrier, and it's the barrier that good things get absorbed into our bloodstream and bad things get removed. Well, this barrier can get disrupted pretty easily because it's just one cell thick, and all these changes in our environment really are assaulting to this barrier. So some of the signs is, I talked about some of the signs that you would expect for gut dysbiosis, but other things that you would not expect are things like anxiety, brain fog, depression, low mood. A great article that I thank you, Carson, for sending me on foods and depression. It is so interesting how much how we put in our body and how our body's able to process it can cause, even affect things like OCD, and of course acne, joint pain, but it kind of reminds me of, people would say, oh, they're full of it. Well, they might be. It really, it's the truth. There's science behind that statement. It's really true. So what happens is when these environmental toxins, they can cause little holes in this barrier. We have these things in our gut called tight junctions, and these toxins cause these areas to open up, and that's why it's called leaky gut or permeable bowel, because these things that are supposed to get gone get recirculated. So it really makes a big difference. So consequently, a lot of proteins get absorbed back into the body, and your immune system sees those as a foreign invader. Your immune system's thinking something's not right, and so it attacks it. And so if you leave with one thing tonight, know that keeping your gut healthy, getting your gut healthy, whatever it takes, is the key for autoimmunity. It is absolutely the key. So it's easy to define the problem. How do we work on a solution? As I said, chronic inflammation is the swimming pool that autoimmunity lives in. So we have to deal with chronic inflammation. Your body's fighting something. Your body's just all confused though. Like in that group I talked about planning a party and this rumor weed starts, everybody gets confused and nothing happens. Well, this confusion, these cells start attacking your joints, start attacking your brain, start attacking, your skin. I mean, they find some area to attack. So we want to look for triggers. The biggest trigger is gluten. And it's like, oh no, she's going to talk about gluten. And she's going to be on the gluten gluten-free bandwagon. I am not on the gluten-free bandwagon. I want to tell you the science of gluten and give you some options. Gluten's a very touchy subject because it's so delicious and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in soy sauce. It's in some shampoos. I mean, it's in everything. And, grain, it's like amber waves of grain. But amber waves of grain are not the same today as they were even probably about 150 years ago. It all started changing in 1870. In 1870, they developed I think it's called the roller steel mill. See if I'm telling you right. The modern steel roller mill. And so my joke to Mike was, we need to bake like it's 1869, because the wheat before that was the same wheat probably that Jesus ate. But once the modern steel roller mill happened, it was able to smash the grain and separate it into parts. And so everybody got to eat fancy white flour. I mean, even poor people could afford fancy flour. So what used to be brown flour to make brown bread became fancy flour. Who wouldn't want that? It baked up prettier, fluffier, tasted more airy. I mean, heck, what a deal. Plus, bugs didn't eat it. Oh my gosh. We can keep this indefinitely. Bugs don't eat it. Well, duh. We figured out bugs didn't want it because there weren't any vitamins or minerals or fats or proteins or any of that stuff that God put in that bread and in that wheat to make bread originally. So something has changed in our environment. It's not our genetics, but a lot has changed. I mean, the way we grow our food has changed. The way we process our food has changed. The way we eat our food has changed. And the very food itself has changed. So that was the first change, and it was revolutionary. I mean, it was the first processed food, because that was the first time they could grow this food hundreds of miles away and ship it, and it's still good, and eat it months and months later, and it's still good. So the very first processed food, I mean, is as long ago as like 1874. Pretty interesting. And it was cheaper. I mean, I don't know why, but it's like they started mass producing it, and it really went crazy. So, the pests knew before we did that wasn't as good as, the real food. So then there was the second change. The second technology revolution that radically changed things was the genetic alteration of wheat. And this was all done for good reasons. This was done to feed people. I mean, nobody had any ulterior motives in changing wheat. You know, they just tried to figure out, how can we make this drought tolerant? How can we make this easier to harvest? How can we get a bigger, grain bulb or whatever it's called? And so they just started working on it and genetically modified it, and it worked. So hybridized seeds came onto the market and synthetic fertilizers. So we fed 1 billion extra people. I mean, that's a good thing, right? Well, but we never could figure out really what it did to the human body. And so then the third change. So we had these separators, and then we had genetic modification. The third change happened in 1974, and that's when a guy named John France, who was an organic chemist, developed glyphosate. What's glyphosate? Glyphosate's Roundup. Roundup was developed to kill weeds around plants, but Roundup does so much more. I mean, you don't put it on there just to kill weeds or in your flower garden. You put it around the food when you first plant it, because then it can come up, but then you put it on at harvest. That's the key that we know that Roundup does now. Roundup helps defoliate plants. It helps the trash, the non-food, fall away from the plant, so it makes harvest way faster. And that was just a huge thing, because now we know that there's residue from the Roundup left on the food. So the International Agency for Research on Cancer concluded in 2015, very recently, that Roundup is probably carcinogenic. Now, that's about as strong as you can get when you're going against Monsanto, if you value your life. I mean, it really is. And I hate to say that, because I try to stay out of the weeds, but when you read about glyphosate or Roundup on the internet, you will see such a diverse group of opinions, and you have to find out who's paying for that opinion, because it's very hard to find real truth. And in my master's program in the medical school, I mean, they talked about this all the time. You have to dig. And they also talked about glyphosate all the time. Many people think they're gluten sensitive. Now, celiac disease is the autoimmunity where your body cannot tolerate gluten. And if you have celiac disease, you cannot eat one bit of gluten without a problem. But nowadays, the gluten-free craze, a lot of people think that they're also gluten intolerant. I'm one of those people. I started having wrist pain, and it scared me to death, because as a dentist and a ping pong player and a pretend artist and all that stuff I like to do, everything I need my wrist. And our dad has rheumatoid arthritis, so I thought, oh no, what if I'm getting rheumatoid arthritis? So read some stuff. This is before I went back to school. But anyway, I decided to just get off gluten for 1 month and see how I felt. And that's a hard thing to do. Immediately, I felt better. Immediately. It went totally away. If we go out to eat or we're somewhere, I mean, I never tell anybody, I try not to tell anybody, because that's like the worst thing to do to make friends, is to say, I'm gluten-free. No, you just don't say that. I've learned the hard way. And, so say you eat it, and then the next thing I know, my wrists are stiff. I mean, so am I sensitive to gluten? I don't know. Am I sensitive to glyphosate? The new research indicates that you might be gluten sensitive, but you also might be glyphosate, Roundup sensitive. Who knows? Now, they're starting to use glyphosate, Roundup, now also on rice and sugar cane and, all this other stuff. So it might be a reason to look at your environment, see what works in your environment, and if it works, to even just start somewhere, taking a little bit of it out. Because for so many people, there's that threshold, and if you have full-blown autoimmunity, you have to do more. If you are farther on down the scale, you can start slower and make a few small changes. But all of these things, well-intentioned, just were done with no regard to human nutrition. So an interesting book, if you want to read about wheat, is called Wheat Belly. It's by a cardiologist named William Davis. I didn't put him on the list, but he's great. I really trust his what he talks about. And he says this thing being sold to us called wheat, it ain't wheat anymore. And it's kind of true, because we just think, well, our great-grandparents ate wheat, why did they not get sick? It wasn't the same thing. And every year, it's changing. So first we invented these mechanical technologies, then we got these genetic technologies, then we got these chemical technologies, and then there's even a new technology to add more gluten to things to make bread puffier, because we love those big puffy rolls. I mean, that's just what we do. So to know that I'm not on the gluten-free bandwagon, I want you to know that there's just so much gluten-free trash. And I ate all of it when I was like going gluten-free, because there's all these gluten-free cookies and gluten-free, so you can really get, a lot of that is still highly processed, trashy food. It's food that shoots your blood sugar up. It's still food that will make you insulin resistant, add to Alzheimer's disease, add to cognitive decline, add to all these other problems. So most gluten-free foods, you have to be careful. If you can just bake like it's 1869, then you'll be much better off. But it's hard to do. You have to start with your environment, see what works for you. Not many people can jump off the cliff and make all these changes at once. That's not really how we're designed. We're designed for baby steps. We're designed to do little things at a time, let those become habits, and do other things. And then you find your threshold. You find where you feel better. And that's what matters. So the first thing is, if you're worried about autoimmunity, or even if you just want to feel better, you might consider eliminating gluten and glyphosate. The second thing I would do is add more fresh fruits and vegetables. And you're going, blah, 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 fresh fruits and vegetables. Yeah, that's what everybody, really, I know that's what you're thinking. I can see it, and I can feel it. But God designed our bodies with specific needs. And those needs are not available in any vitamins. I don't care how good they are. And I believe in there's vitamins we take, and I believe in taking quality nutrients, but we are designed for real food. Real food has far more in it, in one apple, in one orange, in one piece of asparagus, whatever it is, than anything we can get from a pill. It's like how we're designed as, physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. You can't just take one of those things out and be a healthy person. You got to have it all, and that's kind of how it is with the synergism of nutrition. You got to have it all. If you're not eating much, just find one thing you like and start low, go slow. Because if you eat too much of all that at once, you also won't have any friends. It's just true. It's the way it happens. Get a bag of Cheetos and just eat and eat and eat. I don't know how many servings I had. I ate the whole bag. Is that one serving? Probably, so I put one, No, you have to really be intentional about a food log to know what you're doing, because it's hard to tell. Servings are shockingly small. One time a jar of cheese was at the office. I ate the whole jar, and it was 13 servings. I was like, 13 servings? Who eats a serving? It's 1 tablespoon. You don't do it. So you have to keep a food log, and it'll really help you know what you're doing. The next thing I would say, I think I have the list. Is this the list that's on your? Okay, because I did it a few days ago. Is to look at your oral health and get a comprehensive periodontal exam. All bleeding in your mouth indicates chronic inflammation. And please don't think blah blah blah. I think this is the next frontier. You heard it here first, the next frontier. I got a call this week from TED, the TED Talks? And they asked me to do a TED Talk on the forgotten orifice. I mean, now, how am I going to make that interesting? I don't know. Please pray. Please pray. I mean, I don't know. But I have to do kind of a tryout. But I mean, I was amazed, and the person that called me said, I think this is the next health frontier. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Dr. David Perlmutter wrote me this week, who read my paper. And if you know him, he's the empowering neurologist, and he read my paper, and he said, this is fascinating. Now, I am not bragging on myself. Please know, I am not bragging on myself. This was a requirement for my master's, and I chose that topic. I was in a medical school with physicians, and I was like, what can I write about that I know about? And so they made fun of me for calling it the forgotten orifice, and but then they gave me 100%. I mean, it is so overlooked in our world. I mean, bleeding gums are totally dismissed, and that is the most chronic infection. One of the newest research papers I read this week, it's not in my paper because it's so new, is that 2 of the bacteria in the mouth induce rheumatoid arthritis. Induce. You don't ever see that word. Contribute to, may contribute to, may influence, never induce rheumatoid arthritis. That's huge, because this is the inflammation we have control over, right? This is the inflammation we can see. This is the inflammation we can actively treat and know objectively that we've made progress. So at your dentist, tell you, if you haven't had every year, if you don't get where they do the numbers, 4, 6, 2, 1, you want it that every year. And if you don't, ask for it. Ask your dentist for it. A comprehensive perio exam. It really and truly may save your life. What are the bacteria that we find only in the mouth? It's found 2 places. It's found in the mouth, or it's found in colorectal tumors, colorectal cancer. It's a bacteria only in the mouth, only in a colorectal tumor. So it matters. It's not because I'm a weird dentist, but there's also saliva. I'm a weird dentist probably, but that's not why I'm saying this. There's also saliva tests that you can take that show some of these bacteria. We can test for 11 bacteria, and we're still learning. We're still just learning so much. So that's another way you can change your environment. Number 5 is to evaluate your home for cleaners, perfumes, pesticides, herbicides, molds. That all kind of goes without saying. And again, start low, go slow. Again, say, okay, I'm going to change. I'm going to start using maybe essential oil instead of whatever. But do one thing at a time. I mean, start low, go slow. Give yourself grace, because I don't want you to leave overwhelmed. I mean, as I continued to study and was telling Mike this should be a summit, it can be stressful. And the 6th thing is stress. You've got to identify your stressors. One of the most insidious causes of autoimmunity is stress, and it's proven. It's proven. There's good studies out there. One of the most recent studies I read, they took 40 women who had autoimmune problems of varying types, and they gave them a personality test. It tested quite a few things. I think it tested 48 personality traits. Then they gave the same test to 41 women who had absolutely 0 autoimmunity, any kinds of autoimmunity. And they found vast differences in personality. Now that's a small study. 40 people is a small study. But it ended up being just so significant of the changes. So the women who suffered from autoimmunity were excessively kind. They had generally deep inferiority feelings. They were prone to always conforming and not speaking their mind, and they were self-depreciating. So, who knows? That's not the same for everybody, but if that's the same for you, that matters. And one of the strategies is to identify the toxic people in your life. And identify the toxic people and stay away from those toxic people, and as much as you can. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's not unchristian. It's just reality. And I think that may be some of the shake the dust off your feet. You know, you just need to identify those people and make changes. Because stress, when you get stressed, your cortisol goes up. God designed us with a stress response to run from the tiger, to get away from the danger, or to fight. He designed us with that response to be fast and then go rest. He didn't design us like we live in our world with this cortisol that's just high all the time. And, you know, it's high when we go to bed, and it's high when we wake up, and it's high, you know. Because when cortisol's high, your body's not repairing. You're not digesting food. You're not absorbing nutrients. So when you're around toxic people, your cortisol's high. You're not digesting. You're not repairing. You're not absorbing nutrients. So it really does matter. And there's lots of other studies too. I mean, that would just be a really fun ebook to write about all the studies because you know, I think as Christians so often we're like, oh, we just want to love everybody. Well, we might love them, but we don't have to like them. I mean, that's the truth. So we might need to get away from them. But one thing to do that I would recommend is when you're evaluating your stress, because your stress is contributing to your autoimmunity 100% of the time. So make a list, get a piece of paper and put it replete, deplete, and sustain. So in the replete column, put things in your day, do this for 2 or 3 days, put things in your day that feed you, that fill you up, that make your heart sing. Put things, it can be little, you know, whatever just makes you happy. Then in the deplete column, put things that deplete you. And then in the sustain column, you know, there's things like unloading the dishwasher or folding clothes or, you know, those things you have to do that you really can't change maybe. But if you can change one thing at a time, the deplete column, start doing it. Because your health depends on it. If it means changing a job, change a job. If it means changing a friend group, change a friend group. It matters. Your health depends on it. It's autoimmune disease. Your body is destroying itself from the inside out. It's important. There are things you can do. So, then find ways to increase movement. Exercise is one of the best ways to decrease this chronic inflammation. And of course, when you don't feel good, you don't feel like exercising. And I totally understand that. And but if you can make yourself just do a little bit, if you're you know, walking to here tomorrow, walk to the door. I mean, just do a little bit and try to find something you like to do. It doesn't have to be the gym. It doesn't have to be what your friend does. It might be, for my friend, it's vacuuming, and I think she's so weird in that area. But that's great exercise because, you know, that's moving. And just to find, you know, get a hula hoop, get a Zumba tape, you know, whatever it is. But find something you like to do and do a little bit of it and start somewhere. Do a little bit more next week than you did this week. It really makes a difference. Another thing is that exercise is essential for mental capacity. I've been studying too much. No, it's absolutely essential to maintain your memory. Yeah, see, it's a problem. I need to go run or do something. Oh goodness. So then the 8th thing I have is consider medical grade nutrient support. Now, always food first. Always food first, always food first. And the reason I say medical grade or pharmaceutical grade is that there's so much trash out there. Supplements, vitamins, all that stuff, they're not regulated in the United States. And they're regulated in a lot of other countries. I mean, you'd be better off to get things like made in Germany, because they have the German Commission E, and they really check things out, and they know what they do, and they check out the efficacy of everything that's made there. But here, you can put anything in a pill. It can be called echinacea, and it can have a part of the echinacea that's absolutely worthless. And so you have to be careful what you buy. And I think we live in such an environment that just says take a pill, that it's just so easy to think, I can handle my health with a pill. So I see people so often on this whole side of the spectrum of, you know, natural, taking all these vitamins and pills, And it's really not that different than the people taking pharmaceuticals. You know what I'm saying? In terms of creating an environment, and not just relying on pills. Because our bodies are created for an environment. Our body, God wants us to be physically active, socially active, mentally active, and spiritually active. And those things just don't come in a pill. So I'll mention a few things that I really think that I've really seen help autoimmunity. And the first one is vitamin D. I've never seen anybody who wasn't taking vitamin D, who was even eating good. I've never seen anybody who had a healthy level of vitamin D. And every single person who suffered from autoimmunity has been seriously low. I mean, like in the teens in vitamin D. It's something you need to get tested. You don't want to just take it and not know. It's a cheap test, probably a $30 test or less. But you want to have your vitamin D level around 80. And you'll probably feel better immediately when it starts climbing. Well, vitamin D is a huge immune regulator. And if you get it naturally, you can get it naturally, but you have to be outside naked at noon. And so that's not good for social connectedness. And we know social connectedness is probably the main thing for health. So I'd recommend maybe a supplement or a big fence. But vitamin D is inexpensive. I mean, you probably can get enough for like $10 for a month or less. I mean, it's really cheap. Get yourself measured. That's the main thing. The second thing I would talk about are spore-formed digestive probiotics. Now, we went to this Brain Awakening seminar just 3 weeks ago in Florida, and spore probiotics were kind of a new topic. Dr. Amen was there. Ron Kaufman was there, just a whole lot of really great speakers. And spore probiotics are sort of a new kind of probiotic, and they kind of regrow better in the gut than other probiotics. They are probably the way to repair a gut. It's not something you have to take your whole life necessarily, or every day for your whole life, but look into spore digestive probiotics. They pretty amazing. I think they have a lot of a promise. And of course, at a Brain Awakening seminar, it was all about the gut, because the road to good health is paved with good intestines, right? I mean, that's what we know. And so it's always about the gut. Health starts in the gut. The other thing that's very good for autoimmunity is fish oil. And you want to look for fish oil that is IFOS certified, IFOS. And it's not going to cost more, but it's not going to have any mercury in it. It's going to be clean. And did I say that right, IFOS? Yeah. International Federation, IFOS. Anyway, I think it's IFOS. I don't know. IFOS. You want it to be clean. Because if you take it and it has, well, it's kind of the reason. Most people feel better after they start taking a good fish oil, and if you don't feel better when you're taking something, you kind of have to question if you should be taking it. I mean, there's vitamins and minerals. So, that's real medicine. Herbs, that's real medicine. We just think, oh, you see, a whole line of pills. I mean, that's real medicine, and we discount that. So you want to make sure you're taking something good and know why you're taking it. Fish oil, I have a quote in here from some research that talks about how fish oil is like a basic for autoimmunity. And it said autoimmune diseases in humans, including the reason I'm reading this is because I was surprised that some of these things were included. Autoimmune diseases in humans, including rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and migraine headaches. That's what I mentioned earlier in the lecture. I really never thought about migraine headaches being autoimmune, but it makes sense because they're on the rise too. They're so on the rise, and they're so on the rise in young people. The next thing I want to just mention is colostrum. Have you all, I know you all know what colostrum is. It's the first secretion of breast milk. And colostrum is something that's really helping a lot of people repair their gut. Again, we learned about this at the Brain Awakening seminar, and I probably need to take some more of that too. But it's something you take to heal your gut, and you take it for like 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, and then you get well. And as you change your environment, as you do these other things on the list, start decreasing gluten, start increasing vegetables, start decreasing processed food, then your gut gets healthy. God made our bodies to heal. So colostrum is a really good way to start healing these holes that have occurred with leaky gut. I've got glutamine. Did I give you guys this list too? Is it on this list? I can't remember glutamine's on there. Okay, the reason I mentioned glutamine is not something necessarily that I think you should take as a vitamin. It's something that I think you should first try to get as food. And glutamine's found in like bone broth, cabbage, asparagus, broccoli, spinach, parsley, beans, and then in animal proteins. But glutamine is absolutely essential to keep your gut healthy. And so if you're not eating a very real diet, real food, and of course real food is food that rots. I mean, real food has a short expiration date and it's not printed on it, real food rots. Then you probably do need to find some kind of like protein powder or something that has glutamine in it, because glutamine's essential for gut health. Then somebody, when I was talking about this, they said, well, what would be a jump start would you do? And I said, well, for a jump start, I would probably do a 6-day detox, or I would do the fasting mimicking diet. If you guys were here on the fasting week, and talk to me about that if you want to know about it. But some people like to do a jump start, and a 6-day detox is a really good jump start because it helps clean out your body and eliminate toxins. It helps get your natural detoxification systems working. And so a 6-day detox is great because almost anybody can do anything for 6 days. It's not like a 30-day detox, or what I'm saying. In a 30-day detox, someone's going to have a birthday every time, and so you gotta figure out those things. It has some really good stuff in it, and then while you're on that 6-day detox, you eat really clean. You eat really clean food. So I talked about how supplements, just be really careful what you spend your money on, and be wary of miracle cures. There's just, unless God chooses to heal you, which I absolutely believe in healing, there's just not that magic berry from the Amazon that's going to make all your problems go away and make you look 10 years younger. It's just not there. So what are the takeaways tonight? Number 1, we serve a God who heals. Pray for that. Just because we live in this modern society doesn't mean we don't ask God to heal us, or we don't ask God to show us, minimally show us what to do to get better. Show us people that can help us. Show us a community of people that can support us, that can encourage us, that can walk beside us. And I think that's the main thing, because so often we just feel alone. I mean, when autoimmune hits, fear strikes because it's so chronic. The second takeaway tonight is that we live in this changing world. And so when anybody says, well, this wasn't around when da-da-da-da, no, we live in a changing world. My great-great-grandmother didn't have electricity either, So, why would we say that everything's the same? Nothing's the same. Nothing's the same. One thing I did mention on toxins, healthcare practitioners, we can't just leave our health at the door and not have responsibility too. I sort of see it as a triangle. God, God is at the top. He's sovereign, but we have responsibility, and we want to find good health care providers. We want to find good people that we trust. Everybody's on the same page. So that's one thing to take away. Another takeaway is to use an integrated approach. I'll have people come and see me who say, I don't do x-rays. Well, I can't see them. I can't work without an x-ray. All x-rays are not bad. You can get too many x-rays. You know what I'm saying? I mean, an integrated approach takes the best of everything at a common sense level and tries to make the most of it. And then the next thing is remain socially active. Social connectedness is the key to health. We can have all the seminars on all the topics, but social connectedness is the key to health. And loneliness will kill you and make you sick faster than anything. And you know, that's very much a God said it first, I think. We're made for relationship. Then the final thing is give yourself grace. Take small steps, small changes, what I call start somewheres, and just see what happens, see how you feel, and change your environment. And thank you for coming. Bye.